Welcome to Season 7 of Streaming Into the Void, where we discuss the streaming news for the week ending July 19th, 2026. I'm Kim Hollis, digital marketing expert who played Count the Rice, and she played Count the Rice.
We're officially dropout addicts, aren't we?
We are. With me is Tim Brighty, content creator and gamer, the only person related to the New York Mets who is not available in trade.
Yeah, my contract's too expensive.
Also, David Mumpower, author of Disney Demystified and streaming media analyst who just gashed his knee for no good reason.
I was just trying to flirt with you, Kim. Why am I bleeding?
And the podcast is produced and edited by Raul Buriel, who just wants to watch the world burn. Raul?
Yeah, I think it was David who said a few weeks ago that sometimes you just have to hope for chaos. And that's certainly what we got this week. In a week where Netflix's quarterly earnings indicated a weakness in the streaming industry, the real news was the lawsuit that was filed by the attorneys general of 12 states to block the merger of Paramount-Skydance with Warner Bros. Discovery. And it's a whopper.
That sounds like chaos.
Yeah, boy. The lawsuit led by California Attorney General Rob Bonta makes three separate claims: that the merger of two of Hollywood's five major studios would lead to too much concentrated power in the newly merged company, that the merged company would control an excessive portion of blockbusters, giving them disproportionate leverage over movie theaters, and that the merged company would use unfair leverage to dictate terms and raise prices for cable packages. Notably, the lawsuit did not put forth claims on job losses or on the consolidation of news operations. While both of these latter cases are likely accurate, evidently the attorneys general felt that these cases weren't breaking any antitrust laws, and also not mentioned in the suit were concerns over foreign ownership.
The one thing I'd say is that antitrust pretty much exists because it's the presumption that uncompetitive business practices will hurt jobs, will hurt salaries, will hurt business in general. So it's kind of implied when they make an antitrust claim. But you're right that it's interesting that they've taken this approach. In fact, when we look at history, it's kind of hard to miss the fact that this attempt appears to mirror one where a U.S. judge wound up blocking Random House's potential merger with Simon & Schuster. That deal was not allowed to complete because of intervention from a judge based on pretty much exactly the same claim that the attorneys general are making right now today. So they're basically duplicating a successful past play.
Yes, they're making three different cases, and Paramount would have to counter each one of these to ultimately proceed with the merger. So I'd say at this point, the likelihood that this merger is actually ever going to complete as is very low. There is a lot of inside baseball going on here. For instance, initially the case landed in the courtroom of Judge P. Casey Pitts, and Paramount asked that he recuse himself because he'd previously represented the WGA while in private practice. While again, the suit doesn't have anything to do with the jobs, much less writers' jobs. The AGs had no qualms about the trial being moved, as they wanted it joined with the current civil lawsuit that's been filed against the merger. And that's what's happened, as it's landing now in the court of Judge Martinez Olguin, who this week actually denied a preliminary injunction to block the merger that had been filed in the civil case.
So just to be clear, some people had gone ahead and filed a claim, and that was the lowest low odds. They were basically buying a lottery ticket. So it's not a surprise that that part of this has been dismissed. So we want to make sure that you realize when you hear the judge has already ruled one way, it's just for a trivial amount of this that was frankly a Hail Mary play. The rest of this is what's so interesting, isn't it, Raul?
That's right. The merger is actually scheduled to happen next week, and the AGs have their own pending pending injunction with Judge Martinez Ogwin, who has indicated that she will rule next week on whether she grants the injunction or not. And that is pretty much the ball game. We saw this with the merger of TV station operators Nexstar and Tegna, who were on the brink of merging when a lawsuit filed by a number of parties led to an injunction, with the judge in the case indicating that the plaintiffs had a high probability of winning their case. Once a merger happens, ordering a company to break up is much harder. So next week is going to be make or break.
Yeah, and when we say next week, we're actually talking July 22nd, which means we should know where we stand on this by the middle of the week. Now, Raul has said that there's a very small chance that this deal finalizes. What he's actually saying, and I'm not putting words in his mouth, we've just talked about this already, is that there's a very good chance that the parties all speak together and they agree, well, what if we tweak this and this? However, the attorneys general are currently posturing as if they're not interested in a compromise. So what's going to happen is if this injunction doesn't go their way, Paramount is going to finish the transaction as it stands. And, the cards are going to fall where they will. Raul believes very strongly that the judge is going to rule in a way where Paramount has to negotiate some and possibly compromise. And thus far, they haven't seemed willing to do that because they haven't had the need. They knew that the administration wanted this deal to finish, so they've been playing offense. Now they've switched to defense, and while they're happy with the judge that they've got here, the reality is that this judge was appointed by President Biden, not President Trump. And President Trump's administration are the people who want this deal to finish. So while we try and keep politics out of this podcast, they keep crashing in whether we want it to happen or not. And in this case, it does seem like someone who should be more protective of antitrust is going to make the decision. And if they do rule in the favor of the attorneys general, then yes, Paramount is going to have to do something, because pretty much every business article you'll read about this right now mentions what we've been saying all along. Paramount's new ownership, in its infinite wisdom, put in this ticking mechanism where they have to pay more the longer this goes out, because they were so sure that the administration could cram this through. So if that doesn't happen, the whole thing gets interesting. And Raul, we're just watching a lot right now because this mirrors the Tegna situation as well, doesn't it?
Right. We'll come back in a moment to the conversation about why it's so important that this merger happens when it does, or when Paramount wants it to happen. But yes, to come back for a moment to the Nexstar-Tegna merger, one of the main grievances in this case was the consolidation of ownership of TV stations in specific markets. And of course, the current FCC this week indicated that they'd be exploring repealing those specific rules. As it stands, Nexstar-Tegna would violate those rules, which made it so shocking that the FCC was willing to allow the merger to go ahead. So it makes a lot of sense that the current pro-business administration in the White House, with, let's call it, questionable adherence to the rules, would smooth things over for such a merger.
Yeah, I want to drive home what we're saying here. Right now, there is an injunction by a court saying, according to the laws of the land, this isn't possible. And Tegna and Nexstar can't get around that. And so what they've asked is for the government to switch the rules. And because the FCC seems to be at the beck and call of the administration, they're talking about doing that right now. And given what we've just watched with the president speaking on national television and immediately calling for the revocation of licenses of the broadcast networks that declined to broadcast its national address. So the FCC hasn't done anything with that yet, but it might, because it does seem to be listening to whatever the administration wants, which means the Nexstar deal could still be completed simply by changing the law and thereby overruling the judge, which is a wild thing. And we could see the same thing happen with Paramount. Folks, I'm not joking when I say this. I feel like I'm watching a football game and both teams are just marching down the field and exchanging touchdowns, because we think it's going to go one way and then it goes the other way and then vice versa. There have been so many twists and turns in this already, and we'll know a lot more about what happens on Wednesday. But for the time being, it is absolutely chaotic.
In the context of these tenuous adherence to the rule of law. It was reported this week that members of the FCC that voted to approve the Paramount merger with Warner Brothers had received gifts from Paramount during their deliberations, which is probably illegal.
Do we even know what illegal is at this point? I mean, real talk.
Oh, God. But yes, this brings us back to why next week's decision on the preliminary injunction is so important. If the injunction is granted, the trial will likely go on for months. Paramount tried mightily to avoid that, oftentimes avoiding subpoenas from attorneys general for more information on the merger, for instance, in hopes that the merger would move ahead quickly. As David has pointed out, there is this ticking mechanism in place that the longer this merger takes, the more it's going to cost. A delay means that a decision likely won't happen until the next federal election, where the balance of power in Congress can possibly shift. And if that happens, this could easily lead to congressional hearings. Last week, David pointed out that the purchase of EA by private equity was perhaps the most leveraged buyout of all time. That will pale in comparison to the merger of Paramount and Warner Brothers. A number of Middle East entities are bankrolling this merger, and turmoil in the Middle East is not helping these sovereign wealth funds. Oracle's Larry Ellison is also bankrolling this merger, just as the AI bubble appears on the brink of bursting, which could severely impact Oracle's value and Larry Ellison's wealth. As glib as it sounds, delay is the goal here. With every passing day, it's less likely this merger will happen.
And we say that knowing full well that on Wednesday, the whole thing could be over. If the attorneys general don't get the injunction, their lawsuit is going to be in a lot of trouble, and Paramount will probably breathe a huge sigh of relief. So we've got an inflection point coming, and we're just trying to guess and make suppositions based on what historically we would have expected. But we keep stressing the fact a lot doesn't make sense right now. We're just making our peace with that. There are things happening that are legitimately unprecedented in any of our lifetimes. But when we go back to the one point Raul just made, the Larry Ellison point is crucial to this particular discussion because, as a reminder, one of the reasons Warner Brothers initially rejected Paramount as a suitor was because Larry Ellison wanted to say, hey, I'm good for it on the loans, rather than actually writing his name down on a loan and guaranteeing the money. He was just saying, I've never had a problem with any of my other things. You'll be fine. And as Raul states now, Larry Ellison's Oracle, I don't want to say it's in serious trouble yet, but as shocking as it sounds, that company is not steady at the moment. And if AI did go a certain way, which is unlikely, I will go so far as to say wildly unlikely, but if it did, we could witness one of the largest companies in the world suddenly be pretty much exactly where some banks were in 2006 through 2008. It'd be bad. So for Ellison to be involved in this is a financially stressful aspect of the entire conversation, one that's barely even being discussed because there's so much other chaos.
Well, that's enough about Paramount. What happened with Netflix this week?
So Netflix reported their Q2 earnings this week, and they admitted what analysts had already been reporting, that the streamer was having trouble with the stickiness, let's say, of their second seasons of a number of shows. The drop-off from season 1 to season 2 was considerable for many shows and was impacting the streamer, although co-CEO Ted Sarandos said that they were already turning the tide on this trend. Netflix did miss revenue estimates ever so slightly, although they beat earnings per share also ever so slightly. What's significant here is that we're all accustomed to Netflix blowing the estimates out of the water. So when actual numbers are pretty much in line with estimates, that's just disappointing.
Unfortunately, the rule is line go up.
Yeah, that's right. Netflix actual numbers have to be pretty remarkable for Wall Street to be happy, because the estimates are oftentimes baked into the price of the stock. And when Netflix doesn't do so great, then people are going to sell their stock thinking that Netflix should have done better. It's oftentimes a self-fulfilling prophecy, but of course, when Netflix says, yeah, no, we did exactly what Wall Street estimated. So coincidentally or not, Netflix is also moving to release their What We Watch reports only once annually annually instead of every 6 months.
Yeah, I don't think that's coincidental. I think that's a direct response to what they anticipated Wall Street doing. Netflix doesn't miss anything, and they realize the fact that what's happening is we're trying to give people exactly what they want, and they're still complaining. So screw them. We're going to do what we want, and we're going to want to do this once a year because we're tired of not getting a bonus for transparency.
That's right. We already know that Netflix has stopped reporting on their subscriber numbers simply because they feel that that is not a relevant metric to the value of the company. And now, evidently, they seem to feel that how many people viewed their latest hit show or movie is also not relevant to the value of the company. And so they're going to give us that information less and less frequently. Now, of course, when you're a company like Netflix, you have a right to do whatever you want, but that also leaves us in a position where it leaves us speculating on a number of things. If we don't know exactly how many people have watched, say, the latest season of Wednesday on Netflix, then we have to wonder if maybe many people didn't watch that. It's almost self-fulfilling in a way that leads to negative feedback instead of positive feedback. I don't know if this is really the right choice or the right move for Netflix.
Netflix is really in a catch-22 here because people said they weren't being transparent enough. And so they gave everyone exactly what they wanted. And then they started being hit because people were over-analyzing the data and they were being hypercritical of that. So Netflix is like, this takes a lot of energy. If you don't appreciate it, screw you. We won't do it. And to a larger point, I'm starting to believe, and this is just my opinion based on absolutely no metrics whatsoever, a lot of what we're seeing with Netflix stems from one simple problem. And it's a self-inflicted wound. Not that long ago, Netflix redid its home screen. And I believe in rebuilding the home screen in a way that's not as user-friendly. They have hurt their own traffic because it's harder to find things. I honestly believe everything we're saying about Netflix comes down to that, and it really is that simple. And the other thing I want to point out when we're discussing Netflix's numbers is this includes the billions of dollars that Warner Brothers paid them for not actually becoming their next owner, which means these numbers could have been worse if not for that happy little bonus of about $3 billion.
Okay, Tim. So why don't you take us on a little odyssey around the box office this week?
Hey. So after the disappointment that was Minions and Monsters and the disaster that is Moana, we have to turn to Christopher Nolan to save the box office. And indeed he did with The Odyssey. I saw so much debate about this, but I don't think it was a question that it was going to be big. $51.2 million on Friday? What? 17.6 of that coming Thursday night. That's $120 million weekend at least. And the movie apparently is also spectacular.
Basically, this is going to open to about 3 Bourne movies at once, is what I'm hearing from
you. Yes. Also, 95% fresh at Rotten Tomatoes. This is huge.
Well, the good news is this won't make Christopher Nolan any more unbearable because he's already at maximum.
Right? Remember when movie theaters were just opening after the pandemic and he's like, I'm here to save movies with Tenet? And we all thought, wow, you're ridiculous. Get out of here. Okay, I guess maybe he had a point. I don't know. Maybe not with Tenet, but at least with this.
Screw you all. I'm giving all the credit to this to Homer and only Homer, period.
So yes, some welcome good news at the box office after some disappointments. As I stated, Moana, $5.5 million for its second Friday, 68.5 million domestic so far.
They spent more than that trying to de-age The Rock. Oh my God.
International's not much better. It's at 121 million worldwide as of the most recent update. My gosh. And then, between this and Star Wars, the Disney's earning report is they're just going to deny existence of these movies, just talk about how great Toy Story did. Because
how about that Devil Wears Prada 2? Wasn't that great?
420 million domestic. Oh my gosh. Or almost at 900 million worldwide. That should hit $1 billion worldwide by the time we're done.
I actually did the calculation the other day, and if Toy Story winds up between 1.2 and 1.3 billion, it's basically going to pay for the losses on The Mandalorian and Grogu and Moana. So the real moneymaker in all this is The Devil Wears Prada 2. So it's a very strange summer.
Because they all cancel each other. Those 3 cancel each other out. I see. Okay. Minions and Monsters, it was a bad weekend for it to release. 127 million domestic so far. Worldwide, it's at actually 300 million. So honestly, that's probably fine. And of course, it will be blockbuster several months after it hits streaming because because first it's going to go on Peacock and no one will watch it. Then when it comes to Netflix a few months later, then everyone will watch it. So we know that one will do well. Yeah, thankfully, July's box office is safe thanks to The Odyssey.
All right, thank you for that. Let's talk about the ratings.
Okay, we have the Nielsen streaming ratings for Monday, June 15th to Sunday, June 21st, 2026. And there is only one thing that can stop the domination of Love Island, and that is the power of Harlan Coben, whoever that is. Because your top original series for the week is I Will Find You, 1.8 billion minutes for 8 episodes after premiering on June 18th. So that was just the weekend number, and it was able to pull that in. We knew this was going to happen. Somehow this always happens. These generically titled adaptations of his books just do absolute ridiculous numbers on Netflix. Thankfully, they're all miniseries too, so they're all one-offs. They're not designed to be multiple seasons because we know what happens on seasons 2 on Netflix. So it's good they're just cashing in with the big season 1s. Not too much exciting on the rest of this originals chart. Love Island is of course second, about 1.7 billion minutes for its 265 episodes, continuing through the month of June and into the beginning of July. Sweet Magnolias is third, full week of its 5th season, 845 million minutes for 50 total episodes. While Dutton Ranch continues to add episodes week by week, 660 million minutes for 7 episodes, 2 more to go, and had a 9-episode first season, so 2 more weeks before we get the finale of that one at the beginning of July. The Polygamist, 596 million minutes, 22 episodes. We saw that last week. Returning in 6, America's Sweethearts, Dallas Cowboy Cheerleaders, 572 million minutes for 21 episodes. The 3rd season of this one arrived on the 16th. Netflix's Outlast The Jungle, 537 million minutes for 8 episodes. It did the competition/reality show thing where actually 6 episodes arrived on last week's ratings and then 2 more on the 18th. That's what happened here for the finale. Not uncommon pattern for Netflix to do. Returning in 8th, Widow's Bay, 415 million minutes for 10 episodes from Apple TV+. This was, yes, its finale.
You are incredibly psychic when it comes to these charts, Tim. Of course, you called that I Will Find You from Harlan Coben coming in at number 1. And you said Widow's Bay would come back for the finale, and there it is.
Yep.
And I do wonder if maybe we'll see it again in a few weeks as the Emmy nominations were announced. I think it was last week, and Widow's Bay racked them
Cleaned
up.
Yes. It upset David very much, but yes. Yep, the final episode of the first season coming on June 17th, so returning for these ratings. And then we await the next Apple TV Plus show to surge onto these charts. Teach You a Lesson, we saw that last week. That is the South Korean action series, 337 million minutes in 10th, and Miss Rachel wraps it up with 321 million minutes for her 8 episodes. Movies is still unfortunately led by Maternal Instinct with 987 million minutes. I am judging every single person who watched this very harshly, because in addition to Hoppers, you could have been watching Voicemails for Isabel, 398 million minutes. Really? That's a very disappointing start for this one. At least it is only the weekend number. I expect that to actually grow next week.
I did what I could, Tim. What do you want from me?
I know. You're only one person. You can only watch it so many times in a weekend. Hopper, as I said, is third, 349 million minutes. So unfortunately, those two combined still doesn't reach Maternal Instinct. In 4th, Percy Jackson and the Olympians, The Lightning Thief, 339 million minutes, credited to Disney Plus and Netflix. I also throw it in 9th, Percy Jackson's Sea of Monsters, 207 million minutes.
Tim, I would like to guess that this suddenly appeared on Netflix.
Absolutely did on June 15th.
Okay.
Tim, why would Netflix suddenly have an interest in the Percy Jackson franchise?
Is this because this is like a Kids Bop version of The Odyssey?
Yes.
Okay. You'd think they would have waited a couple weeks, but this is very funny. It's very curious when Disney properties suddenly jump to Netflix. Like, what's the licensing there? It was a Fox property. Maybe that has something to do with it. But yeah, it's curious to see Disney properties suddenly jump to Netflix. That's not very common, but I'm curious as to the reasoning there.
So it's licensing revenue, and it's funny that you say this because there's a Wells Fargo paper that came out the other day that is getting a lot of traction, even though it makes no sense whatsoever, because Wall Street loves super short-sighted ideas that make no sense. An analyst there suggested that Disney should just kill Disney Plus and start licensing all of its content. And if Disney did that, he thinks that the company could make $15 billion, because rather than actually serving its own stuff to its own customers at a low margin, it could be high margin marketing to, I guess, Paramount and Netflix. And I want to emphasize, we're heading to a point where there aren't that many companies left. So the idea is bad for that reason. But also, it's like, I wanted to hand him like a list of all the things Josh D'Amaro has said about One Disney, which hinges on only one thing, which is Disney Plus. But for whatever reason, Disney stock suddenly soared several dollars because people were like, well, maybe they'll do that, not realizing the fact that it was never, ever, ever going to happen. So when these things show up on the Nielsen streaming charts, because Disney does license to Netflix, people notice and they get irrationally excited for all the wrong reasons.
New in fifth, Song Song Blue, 245 million minutes for Netflix. This was, of course, a theatrical release late in 2025. Not a Neil Diamond biopic, but a Neil Diamond tribute act biopic. Sure. In sixth, we have something called Flowers in the Attic, 239 million minutes from Netflix. It didn't take as much digging as I thought to figure out what this was, but I'm still kind of blown away by it. This was a novel adaptation that was made in 2014, but it was also a TV movie. It aired on Lifetime. It stars Heather Graham and Ellen Burstyn. The plot is very, very terrible. But since it showed up on Netflix on June 15th, here it is.
Yep, that's as far as we're going to go on the plot. You all can Google it yourselves.
You can read the description on Wikipedia right now and just get very upset. What the hell? Of all the things, really? So I've discussed 9, so that leaves 3 spots left, 7, 8, and 10, and they are 3 Toy Story movies. Toy Story in 7th, Toy Story 3 in 8th, Toy Story 4 in 10th. Now, this makes sense because Toy Story 5 arrived in theaters on June 19th during this ratings weekend. How come the best Toy Story movie isn't among those 3? Justice for Toy Story 2, people. Come on.
I actually wrote about this the other day, and my comment was, I'm guessing it's like 11th or 12th on the list.
Yes, obviously it is. I'm being purposely obtuse, but it just struck me as very funny that like...
But I will not take your Toy Story 4 slander, sir.
Yes, obviously, if we saw
I have
more,
a bunny shirt that I wear regularly. I'm just going to say that.
It would be 11th, but I just found it amusing that like we got one, with the first one, 238 million minutes in 7th, the third one in 8th, 212 million minutes, and the fourth one in 10th, 207 million minutes, not the second one.
This is how the Disney flywheel is supposed to work. Like, if you know about one Disney project, you want to watch other Disney projects. And based on that logic, The Mandalorian really should have shown up on these charts over the summer since there was a new Mandalorian movie.
Yeah, or maybe something Star Wars related at all. Nope. Acquired is 10 shows we have seen before, led by Bluey, 927 million minutes. But we have one returning show in 4th, House of the Dragon, 636 million minutes for 19 episodes from HBO Max. The 3rd season premiered on June 21st. The HBO Max episodes tend to drop on Sundays. These ratings end on Sundays, so it's kind of nebulous how much is actually being tracked. Maybe people were watching it. Maybe people tuned in just to catch up before the 3rd season premiered. Maybe there is some in there, so we'll see it grow next week. I have not seen a lot of people talking about the show so far as to its quality, but I don't know if we'll see it again. Maybe we'll see it for a couple weeks and then not until it's final in August. Other than that, nothing out of the ordinary on these charts. Nothing too weird this week. Just all those the same shows we've talked about over and over again. But yeah, at least we had something to end the temporary domination of Love Island, and we need some better movies in addition to the Toy Story ones.
All right. Thank you, Tim. As always, we close it out with what's been keeping us busy over the last week.
Everyone's about to be shocked, aren't they?
Yes, we did watch something on Peacock, and that something was Obsession. Just a little movie that came out earlier this year that didn't cost much to make, but it made about $1 billion at the box office. I know it wasn't that much, but it was a stupid amount of money.
So much so that Paramount in court argued that there was nothing wrong with this merger because Obsession made so much money that obviously anybody could make a movie for less than $1 million and still earn $400 million. You could actually look that up. That was said in court. That's how successful Obsession was.
Yeah, it is a very, in my opinion, well-written movie with a fantastic performance from the lead actress. I would say it's a really great horror movie that I never want to watch again. How about you, David?
Well, you just stole my line. So yes, that was what I said last night was, boy, that was great. We're never watching it again. There is a sense of humor percolating under the surface of this that I absolutely love. And an example that's only going to make sense if you've seen the movie, but she is losing her mind at one point, just screaming at him. And then suddenly he says something and her replies, okay, thank you, just as subtly as possible. And it somehow makes the whole thing so much more unsettling. And that's the thing about this. They had an idea and they understood how to actually tell the entire story based on that idea. And since Kim already took one of mine, I'm going to take one of hers. She described it as the best Twilight Zone episode in 60 years. And she's absolutely correct. It is that kind of thing. I'm going to say it like this. I feel weird recommending it because it is not a happy movie, but there is a moment. How am I going to say this without spoiling anything? Let's just say there's a moment where a guy makes it rain and it's too terrifying to be funny, and yet it is objectively hysterical and brilliant. I mean, legitimately brilliant, because you can see immediate regret when it happens, and it took my breath away. And so the director of this, I don't know if they're a one-trick pony or not, but that one trick is spectacular. This is one of the best movie ideas I've seen in ages, but many movie ideas don't actually turn into great films. This is also a great film, and if you don't want to watch it, I think that's probably a smart move.
I found myself thinking there had to be quite a few people who watched this more than once for this to have made the kind of box office revenue it did. And that stuns me because I can't imagine wanting to go back to the theater and watch it again. It's probably better just watching it at home where you can pause it if you need to. I do recommend it, but I'll never see it again.
We were joking, like people legitimately went on first and second dates to see this film, and the discomfort that must have caused. I mean,
oh, Lord.
It is off the charts. But the other thing I want to throw in, because we do give Peacock a hard time because it is the worst streaming service. Objectively, there's no doubt about it. But I was joking with Kim that we were probably going to get ads every 10 minutes. And they served 3 minutes of ads before the movie started, and that was it the whole way through. And I respect that. I thought that was perfectly acceptable because, you know, when I watch Peacock television shows, it's really, really bad.
It's so bad.
I usually don't watch Peacock television shows. We pay $2 a month for the service, and that's about what we get out of it. But in this case, I was delighted with how they handled it.
And how about that Home Run Derby on Netflix?
We did watch that as well.
With the ads. I was going
Tim's making a joke because I said something the other day, and it is true. We were distributed 34 ads
so many
in
ads.
35 minutes. That is not a joke. We counted 34 ads in 35 minutes. They would run 3 minutes of ads, and then 3 minutes of stuff, and then 3 minutes of ads. And they were quick ads, and Kim was interested in many of them. So, you know, she found value in that because she's such a professional. She's always thinking about her job, and she was like, how does this marketing work, and how is this being distributed? So, you know, it wasn't like it didn't have value for us, but Netflix lost the plot with its advertising. When Netflix is looking up at Peacock, we have a problem.
Yes, but with that said, the Home Run Derby itself was fantastic.
This seems like a good time to mention Kim is a Cardinals fan and the person who won is a Cardinal.
Yes, it's true. Oh, okay.
David, let me ask you this about the Home Run Derby. Last year, it got a lot of negative press because of all the extra marketing that was happening on the field during the Home Run Derby. The people they would get to announce and introduce every aspect of that event. Like, it's anything more than people hitting dingers. That's all we want. And yet there was still all kinds of nonsense going on, musical performances and wrestlers that would come out for some reason. Did we get that kind of nonsense this year?
So there was some of that cross promotion, but it was nowhere near as egregious this year. I'm operating the assumption that Netflix heard the criticism and did what it could to negate some of it, but there's always going to be some cross promotion. It's just how they choose to view this as a marketing tool. I mean, they didn't buy the rights to the Home Run Derby because they love baseball. They just wanted millions of eyeballs. And in this case, I mean, Kim and I definitely turned on Netflix that night specifically because we wanted to watch the Home Run Derby. So to that extent, I would say it was successful on their part.
Raul, what's been keeping you busy?
So my daughter's been under the weather lately, so we spent a lot of time just on the sofa binging television. And one of the things that we binged was the first season of Pop Culture Jeopardy, which is hosted not by our regular Jeopardy host, Ken Jennings, but by Saturday Night Live writer and Weekend Update host, Colin Jost. And it was on Prime Video. So I'm going to mention also the ads on streaming are interminable. It's very annoying, especially as we tend to get the same ads over and over again. There is, of course, no opportunity to skip those ads. These streaming services have it built into the platform that there's no way to skip the ads. There is, of course, a higher tier now for Prime Video subscribers. They call it Ultra, and you can pay and you can get no ads. As a Jeopardy contest, this was, let's call it remedial Jeopardy. The questions, of course, were all pop culture questions. I will say that as a Jeopardy host, Colin Jost is perhaps not the right choice. He does seem to sometimes struggle with the mechanics of Jeopardy at times. He says he watches Jeopardy all the time, and I don't know that he does because he maybe doesn't understand some aspects of it, and he spends a lot of time prattling on when we all know that when you're watching Jeopardy, all you want to do is get to the game, get to the clues, and get to the answers, and oftentimes that doesn't happen. And also, weirdly, the contestants were in teams of 3, so we would actually have 9 people up on stage, and so the chances that anyone was going to get anything wrong, you would think would be low, and yet there would be entire clues where someone wouldn't know the answer. That was unfortunate. Really, as a Jeopardy contestant, one of the very important things that you do in Jeopardy is you have to know how to wager when it comes to Final Jeopardy. There's famously a episode in the first season of Jeopardy where all the contestants didn't know wagering strategy at the time. It was the first season. I think it was actually the very second episode of Jeopardy, and they all wagered all their money and they all ended up with $0, and so they all went home. Wagering strategy is very important in Jeopardy, and these contestants clearly did not understand wagering strategy, despite the fact that they all themselves seem to understand the mechanics of Jeopardy. They spent no time researching wagering strategy. It was very frustrating. I found myself and my daughter, again, who was under the weather, shouting at the TV for how dumb these people were. It's very frustrating to watch people play a game where they don't know the rules. It was a frustration to watch Pop Culture Jeopardy because of the host, because of the ads, and because the lack of real gameplay from the contestants. Now, I will tell you that season 2 of Pop Culture Jeopardy is on Netflix. So I am more optimistic about that because at the bare minimum, there will be no ads. I hope, and presumably we can fast forward through all the prattle and not have to deal with Colin Jost trying to make banter with contestants. So I am still looking forward to that. I do hope that my daughter starts feeling better soon, but if she still wants to watch a new season of Pop Culture Jeopardy with me, I am looking forward to that opportunity.
Tim, what's been keeping you busy?
So we mentioned it before, but I wanted to talk about it again after spending more time with Retro Rewind Video Story Simulator, one of the big breakouts this year in the burgeoning work the game genre. It is exactly what it implies. You're running a video store in the early 90s, stocking the shelves with movies, and then customers arrive and rent them out, and you'll be checking them out and providing them with change for their payment. They, of course, then return them, and you'll scan the movies back into the system, rewinding the tapes if necessary. Kids ask your parents, and also noting to charge the customer a fee on their next purchase if the return was late or if the movie was broken. New releases arrive every week or so, so you'll want to order a bunch of copies and have the shelves fully stocked for the weekend when there's more customers and special events, and eventually you'll have enough money to expand the store, build more shelves, stock more movies, etc. That is the entire gameplay loop, and it is somewhat addicting, I will admit. My big problem is the game has absolutely no stakes whatsoever. You apparently have no expenses outside of employees, which you don't immediately have right away. You have to unlock the ability to hire them. And once you're able to place the first one at checkout and make sure that they're good at that job, it's a huge relief because that's the worst part of the game by far. There's no competitors. There's no Hollywood Video to your Blockbuster. There's the Big Choice Video to your RST Video. As someone who likes business sims and management type games, this was very disappointing. All the rental prices are also static, so no jacking up the prices for the new releases on the weekend. Just really bothered me.
Tim, I don't play many cozy simulation games. Is there usually competition in these games?
Well, see, I thought it was more like business simulator rather than a cozy game, honestly. I was expecting more like, management possibility rather than what it was. I mean, there is absolutely something to be said for those who want the cozy gameplay where you can't really fail. And you even have time at the beginning and the end of the day to design the store the way you want it with various colors and posters and accessories between the shelves. And I know Kim gave it a try and it's really reliant on mouse and keyboard rather than controller. So it's playable on Steam Deck, but not ideal. So I know she didn't spend a lot of time with it. I mean, it is 95% positively reviewed on Steam. So while it's hitting for the vast majority of players, this is the rare one that did not for me. I just really wish it had a little more depth to the gameplay.
Wow. All right.
So the loop is interesting. And then, the existing movies almost look like they were generated by AI and some of them have like the same titles. The new releases are kind of funny though. Like it took me a minute that I realized the first new release was called Forward to the Past. So I was like, oh, okay. I see what they're doing. Okay.
Oh, clever.
Yes.
All right. Well, thank you, Tim. And thank you for listening to Streaming Into the Void. Please consider subscribing wherever you listen to podcasts. And we welcome your feedback. Remember that we're on social media at Streaming Void and online at streamingvoid.com. If you like what you're hearing, please consider becoming a supporter on Patreon at patreon.com/streamingvoid. Be sure to watch for us again next week.